Astasia, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks so much for having me. It's a joy to be here.
Let's start with your view of the infra world, and you're one of the few people who I follow, and in terms of infra, and you post very interesting things. So let's start with your infra thesis. How do you look at the world of infra?
Yeah, we actually have two theses right now. First, we think that the most valuable part of infrastructure is actually the model weights. So you want to invest either upstream or downstream from the model weights themselves. You're probably thinking, like, how do you do that? The model weights are part of these really large AI infra companies like OpenAI and Anthropic. So we think about it in terms of the data supply chain that goes into the model weights. And we've been investing across this thesis. We've partnered with businesses like Eventual that offers Daft, which is an open source data processing engine that's best fit for multimodal data that can be used for data prep or pre-training. We've invested in Mercor, which offers chain of thought data, and also Datology that offers AI data curation for teams that are pre-training. The derivative of investing in the data supply chain for model weights is actually investing in the model context layer, the information that the model has at inference time. And so we've invested in Letta, which is AI memory, as well as Chalk, which is a real-time feature engineering platform. So that's been a big thesis for us over the past 18 months, really since I joined Felicis. The second thesis, which is more emerging that we're excited about, is how we're shifting from the users of infrastructure being people to AI agents. And with that shift, there's a change in the amount of load and stress and strain put on these systems. We work with a company called Supabase, which is a Postgres database service, and they support vibe coding apps like Lovable, where AI agents take prompts and build applications. And with that, you have different needs like incredibly high provisioning, fast provisioning time, the ability to do branching and snapshotting so you can have rollbacks. And so we think this is just the beginning of how AI agents will be influencing the infrastructure stack. It's exciting. It is much more frontier to think about that layer. I think we're just at the beginning phases of AI agents at scale, but we think in the span of time, it will be incredibly disruptive and really a reimagining of infrastructure, taking it to this next level of scale.
That's amazing. I love the crisp framing of how you look at it. And also Ari Morkas of Datology, he has been on the podcast, big fan of just same thing. It's just very clear in how he thinks. And also Supabase. I love the product. Obviously, Postgres is it's hard to do new things in Postgres, but Supabase has this delight to it where you just sign up and it's surprising how many dev tools just forget about the delight part. So I think it's wonderful. Now, Felicis, and you mentioned that we are in the golden age of infra, and you run the Infra Innovator series. So what themes consistently emerge or surface during these conversations that outsiders may miss?
Yeah, as you mentioned, we have a Felicis Infra Innovators and AI Innovators network here. It is a really amazing group of builders and buyers from hyper growth companies to publicly traded ones. And we get together regularly to talk about key themes, pain points, and where the market is moving. If anyone listening is interested in joining, please reach out to me. We'd love to have you at one of our events. And what's really great about organizing these individuals and kind of like a safe space for sharing is they talk about what's kind of on the frontier for them, not just what they're working with today, but where they see the market going and the needs that they will have in the future. A few themes that have come out recently is, of course, all things AI agents. I think, once again, we're still in the early innings of production grade AI agents that are highly reliable. And we believe that this next phase to making them even more performant is going to come from reinforcement learning, where you can kind of train these AI agents through a reward system to make them more performant. And we've broken down the RL ecosystem today into two core components. One is RL as a service, startups that go into enterprises and large scale businesses who may not necessarily have the talent in house to do RL themselves. They go in and identify unique data sets and use cases and then bring to bear an RL agent that they will serve to their customers. The second aspect of the ecosystem are RL environments. And actually, this week, Andre Karpathy was highlighting how
Yeah.
he's a big fan
Yeah,
of
yeah, yeah, yeah.
RL environments. He thinks that they're actually maybe even more enduring than post training RL, that it could be one step in how we make these agents better. And RL environments allow the agents themselves to be trained. And the RL environments can come in many different forms. We've seen browser first RL environments, full computer use, even RL environments that focus on code generation and software development and security use cases. And so while we know that the model companies have been doing RL and have environments as a priority, we also think that in the span of time, while nascent today, this will be top of mind for enterprises themselves, and that RL environments will be key for any business to improve their AI agents, just as Datology unlocks the ability for any company to do pre-training for really amazing specialized models for their use case. We think that RL environments in the span of time will do that for enterprises as well. And so there are a few startups in the RL environment space, Mechanize, Kaizen, and a number of others, but we're very excited about this new technology.
Yeah, I was about to reference Andre Karpathy's tweet exactly where he talked about um, how personally he's bullish on environments and agentic interactions and how it's, I love the analogy he uses, like it's like a gym for your agents, like let it go work out, get better at whatever part's going to get better at. And right now there's no good way for people to do that for their agents, unless you're a very, very big company or a research lab. And so I think his response was to Prime Intellect, the environments hub, the model environments hub that they released. But yeah, I think this is a very exciting area.
And it's interesting
If
because environments can
Yeah,
be quite specific to an application or a service themselves. And so
yeah,
that's why we think in the span of time it will move beyond just the model companies who are
yeah,
requesting environments to
yeah,
the broader global 2000.
100%. I think that's a huge dimension along which hopefully it'll unlock the next level of scale, which is that's why it's very exciting. Now, if you look at the the different layers like data layer, orchestration, inference, safety, and if you had to redraw this stack for the AI native companies, which layer do you think is more open for disruptions or new category leaders to emerge, and why?
It's interesting. I think the two layers that are most compelling right now is this data layer. Data has always been companies' crown jewels, but there's so many new aspects to the data today. We talked about Eventual's DAF, data processing engine. How do you offer something that is really exceptional at multimodal data, which is image, video, voice, that is the key component for this new Gen AI workload? Also, with thinking about a chalk, the faster you can get data into the model pipeline at inference time, the more performant your service can be. So we really think like data has always been a great category to invest in. This is just the next wave of opportunity. Um, the other area that we think is ripe for disruption is observability broadly. We think about observability today in two core buckets: traditional observability for services. So think about the reimagining of Datadog with an AI first lens, where you have more intelligent models identifying anomalies, but then also helping with the root cause analysis to decrease mean time to resolution for issues and help automate and augment, uh, you know, engineers' time. We think that's very exciting and hasn't been possible before. And then also observability for the Gen AI applications themselves. There was kind of a first wave of looking at the inputs and outputs of the model and maybe the degradation of the service. But because these products are now coming online, it also is important to understand how the end users are experiencing the products themselves. What are the issues? What are the areas that they're actually enjoying to tune the system, as well as the efficacy of the AI agents themselves? You can't apply the first gen LLM observability company to AI agents because they're dealing with multi step workflows that are trajectories, they're calling tools. And so you really need a novel approach to understanding how the agent is performing, doing the debugging, and then also collecting that trajectory data for, once again, RL post training to get a better service.
Let's move on to finding talent and founders. And then when it comes to infra, it's a little bit different. So, where do you actually go to find founders, infra founders, before everyone else? And over time, obviously, different channels work differently. But what methodology or what technique that you use has worked best for you in spotting these founders early?
Yeah. We think that there are three archetypes of founders today. One archetype, which has been enduring, is the domain expert, usually from a hypergrowth or publicly traded company who has built the product internally and now wants to transition and democratize it to everyone else. So we still look around and try to identify really exceptional teams that are on the bleeding edge of infrastructure needs and build relationships with them. And once again, the Infra Innovators group that we have kind of helps with that as well. The second archetype that we're seeing is the applied researcher coming from academia or the labs themselves who have seen the pain points in the infrastructure and are now applying their research to make it better. So we spend a lot of time with MIT, Stanford, and Berkeley. I've been really humbled to partner with teams out of the Sky Computing Lab at Berkeley, which is the same lab that originated Databricks and AnyScale. Actually, the Letta team that I work with comes from there, and LM Arena as well. And it's really amazing because they will take their research and the community they've developed around it to commercialize the efforts. The Letta team, actually, I got to know because I was reading their research. I spend a lot of time seeing what's coming next, and I think that the research papers on Archive are incredibly useful. And so we do that on a weekly basis. And then the third archetype that we're seeing is kind of the Gen Z founders, the hackers who just have incredible insight and are much more like AI native, right? They are not necessarily framing the opportunity in terms of like what has existed before, but coming with fresh eyes in terms of what they need to be builders. And one of the ways that we help build relationships and, activate that network is through our Felicis Fellows program, which is each summer. We just did our second one this July. We bring together undergrad and graduate students who have been doing research or have an interest in AI for a 1 week session where we bring in founders and executives to tell them about what it's like to become an entrepreneur, what are the themes that people are building in, and it culminates in a really awesome hackathon where they come and they present their idea for the company, and there's really nice rewards for the top builders, and we also sponsor their work if they're interested in pursuing it. So there are the three different archetypes. I would say in Infra in particular, this archetype of the Gen Z builder is newer, and that's why we have programs for that group of individual, because it's really exciting. They
Yeah,
don't come from the world of I worked at Google and this is how things are supposed to be. uh,
right.
Really have a fresh take.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And I think it's consistent with my observations, because in the past, just if there's a networking company, then a big VP at some big Cisco,
Yeah,
Juniper, they
Cisco. I
come
went to
out and
Cisco, totally.
exactly. And so they come out and they have their GTM locked down. They sign $1 million contracts. But now more and more infra is becoming, it's a bottom up motion is becoming very, very prevalent because all the developers and users are also Gen Z and they want to use tools first. They want to try out. And then that notion is becoming very interesting, which means we have to track all the signals leading up to that adoption. So maybe my next question is centered on that. You mentioned that you read papers to get familiar with what's getting built, and then that's one signal to see where you want to spend time on. What else do you track to identify some of these early signals? Could it maybe open source tools, some developer tools, something that's kind of picking up momentum? Like, what signals do you track?
So we really like to have thesis-driven investing here. That's one of the reasons that we publish out our thoughts and also have like a call for startups. So we do a lot of primary research, speaking with users and buyers about what they are enjoying in terms of new products that they're adopting, as well as pain points where they wish there was a vendor that was solving it. So we really try to have like on the ground feedback. For more public external resources, I've been a long time investor in open source technologies, having partnered with 5+ companies that have that go to market motion. So we're very mindful of what's going on GitHub and open source communities. And then speaking to kind of that newer builder, that Gen Z archetype, we really are looking for individuals through social media that are publishing out their work. I think what's been amazing and a huge shift as an investor, particularly an infra investor over the past few years, is LinkedIn and Twitter as a distribution mechanism for founders to, raise awareness of what they're doing. You can often see them launching many different types of ideas on there, iterating as they go. And so we do spend a lot of time trying to see signal through social media.
Let's move on to your picking process, decision making process. So let's say you spot something, it's interesting. What's your path from there to investing at the seed stage? Meaning things aren't really baked in, there aren't that many metrics to look at. So how do you make a decision at the pre-seed or seed stage here?
Yeah. So for us, first and foremost, at the earliest stages, which is where I spend the vast majority of my time, often partnering with teams where nothing has been built yet, we really look at the teams themselves. Is there a domain, if they've been further in their crowd, is there like a domain expertise that they have or like unique insights that inform the product and go to market motion? Is there some secret that the company is predicated on that will give them a long-term advantage? And we kind of assess their understanding of the problem space, but most importantly, the ability to have really fast learning velocity and a propensity to action. You know, s- I started my career 10 years ago in infrastructure, and the time horizons for change back then were much longer. It could be years before someone would consider a new technology or the offerings would change dramatically. In AI, it's faster than ever before. Sometimes it feels like it's month to month. And so the only thing in AI and infrastructure right now that's consistent is that it's going to change. And so if you're a founder building at the earliest stages, we really try to assess, your willingness to learn and take feedback, but also listen. Like really amazing founders know how to listen and listen deeply and pull out what is most meaningful to inform the product and go to market strategy. And so we try to assess that when we're getting to know them.
And during diligence, what's a red flag you try to spot? Meaning, like, if one of these things is true, I'm not going to invest. Like, what are those things that you look for?
Well, you know, I would say a really good smell test for us is if we learn something new about the market space or there's a unique insight that's non-obvious. I think that's a really good smell test. since we are domain experts, we do spend a lot of time in the categories and we can hear things that are repetitive. But if a founder has something that really spikes and is different, that's a good smell test for us of like, oh, you've really gone that extra step. In terms of a red flag, for me, I think another thing that's changed in infrastructure investing is the real importance of marketing and community development, breaking through the noise to truly reach your audience and build authentic rapport with them. And so if a founder is undervaluing that aspect of building a company, that's a red flag for me because, the best technology doesn't always win. And no one will know you have a great product or technology unless you get it out there. And so really want founders, any AI infra dev tool founder listening, to really take away with, start building your community yesterday, be unabashed about your particular perspective on a market. It's even okay to be controversial. Sometimes that's even better because you will find people that deeply agree with you. But really, if you're not inclined to the go-to-market side of the house, that's a concern.
When it comes to understanding the business of a given company, what references do you always run for infra? Well, what I mean by that is it the buyer or is it maybe the platform owner? Like, hey, I'm building on Sonnet, so Anthropic could kill your business. Hopefully they don't, but they might. Or maybe it's the user, or maybe a reliability engineer. Like what's the killer reference here? Like, who do you go to verify, okay, this is the real thing this company is building?
Yeah. I actually think that it's more than just one, of course. The user and the buyer are key to our diligence process, really assessing what is the pain point this technology solves on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being no pain, 10 being extreme pain. How much pain do you have today? Trying to assess urgency and appetite for a new product and the timing. Sometimes the timing is off, right? We're just not there yet. And also the willingness to pay. As I said, I work with a lot of open source companies. Open source projects and packages are amazing, but sometimes there's not a monetization path for them. So we assess willingness to pay very actively. The other prong of that we like to understand is the ecosystem in which these technologies operate and who are the most strategic partners to them. This is useful because it not only enables us to understand if there are the defensibility of the technology, right? If your biggest strategic partners, we go talk to them and say, yep, that's on the roadmap, or yep, like we can imagine going that direction, then it could be much harder for you as a business as compared to the strategic partner saying, oh my gosh, we are looking for BD relationships here. We think it is distinct from what we're building. It's not a priority. And you're like, wow, that's really important to know. It's a key layer in the stack. They don't want to go after it. And now you have a new customer acquisition channel as a startup. So we do try to look at both types of personas.
When it comes to usage of the product, you mentioned you partner with founders very early, even before they have a product. So is there a minimum threshold for product proof that you look for? Obviously, there are special cases where the founder is super strong, so you team up with them. But let's say the average case where you need more proof. So what kind of usage metrics or usage signals do you look
Mm, it's a good question. We like to anchor around teams running in production. And there's a lot of, innovation teams that are doing exploration or checking things out pre-prod. That's fantastic. But we really like to see this is so critical it can get in production. And even at the pre-seed or seed stage, if they have an MVP, we'll go talk and it's only being kind of trialed. We'll go talk to the design partners and saying, when do you intend to get this into production? What is the level of urgency? Because value accrues in prod, right? So we try to tease that out as early in the process as
amazing? Yeah, and I think people jokingly refer to experimental ARR, which is like people are trying stuff, and surely enough, the churn is going to be here, and it's going to look horrible. So I think it's very important to delineate experimental ARR from real production. Oh my God, we need this ARR. So it's interesting. So going to the next part of the convo, I want to talk about um, building an edge as an investor. So you mentioned a few different topics. You run Infra Innovators, you read papers, you try to get to founders and builders early. But if you had to summarize, where does your edge?
The examples you gave, I think, all feed into kind of a bigger topic, which is like domain expertise and passion for AI and infrastructure. I've been an infrastructure investor for almost 10 years. I've been really humbled to partner with teams at the earliest stages, be it Launch Darkly or Modal, Supabase, among others. And so for me, I think my edge is having the appreciation of the technology, how it's different, why it matters, and how it can become a really big company. So I think the domain expertise feeds into the innovators network that we have with buyers and builders. It feeds into our talent network of founding engineers and go-to-market executives and advisors. And it feeds into the BD relationships that we have with the hyperscalers and model companies to really give the early stage startups that extra leverage. So I think it's kind of comprehensive. I know it's amazing to be a generalist and work across different categories. But for me, I just have such a deep passion for infrastructure. I love it. I think it's the foundation of everything else. But I think that resonates with the founders that I work.
Yeah, yeah. One of my favorite go-to lines, and if I'm on a dinner party, like "the world runs on infra" is like that's what I open with, and it's usually it's deliberately a little push people, but I agree, the world runs on infra. Now, um, when you invest in an infra company, post investment across all your investments, where did they end up needing the most help from you?
I think it's two prongs. Since we are such early stage investors, we really do try to give them that 10x leverage in terms of customer discovery and insights. The number one recommendation I would have for any founder across any domain is talk to as many users and buyers as possible as early in the journey. Set a benchmark of, hey, I want to talk to 20 customers a month just to really inform what you're building, the why behind it, and assessing willingness to pay. And so we really try to amp that up for our portfolio companies through additional customer introductions. And the second thing that we help with, because often these are very amazing technical founders, applied researchers, is being a thought partner and advisor on the marketing, community, and sales work, thinking through everything from the copy on the website and relating their technology to business value, to thinking through contracting, of how to set up your pilots, and even introducing them to more hands-on advisors who, once again, have lived this experience at some of the hyper growth infra companies to pass on that wisdom. So I would say those are the two big buckets that we focus on.
Recently on X, the platform, there was a big debate on consensus versus non-consensus. And so when it comes to when it comes to infra, what's consensus right now and what corners are currently contrarian?
Yeah. I think that, consensus is that demands on compute and data are growing, and that even smaller businesses who have an AI aspect of their product are going to have more demands on compute and data. I think that's fairly consensus. It's actually funny. Even yesterday, I was talking to a seed stage startup that's building agentic technology, and they're just like, oh my God, our data volumes. I was like, yes, yes, you're seed stage. We understand. I think contrarian is that infra founders today are the grittiest founders out there. And I say that because it's really hard to find categories in infrastructure that are big enough where you can go build a really competitive company where there isn't already an incumbent that's executing incredibly well. A lot of the growth stage infra businesses still have really high NPS. People really like the product. They haven't given up. They've built a multi-product portfolio. They're hyper aggressive and often the founders are still at the helm. So I think that if you are an infra founder today, you really got a lot of courage, honestly, after
Right.
this,
Right.
because you have the growth stage companies, which could be the infra players. You also have the model companies that are expanding scope in terms of their dev tool offerings. And so I give a lot of credit where credit is due for infra founders right now.
Right. And yeah, I think infra founders are some of the most hardcore people that I end up meeting, which is it's I agree, because it's really it's tough, but also the value creation is spectacular if it works out. Now, when it comes to investing, every sector, every stage has tourists. Once in a while, it just the wave comes in, and they do their thing and they're out. So when it comes to infra, what's a tourist trap, and also the areas that you think are tourist traps and everyone should avoid?
I think tourist trap is this belief that if you have a really successful open source project, it's inevitable that you can go build a compelling
Right.
business around it. You have the distribution, you have a million devs using it. They all love it. Oh my God, this is the best thing since sliced bread. And I think that's a tourist trap for people that come in and out of infra is dev love on open source does not necessarily convert to an enduring large scale business. I think another tourist trap in infra is thinking that developer productivity improvements are a strong enough business need that
Right.
people will buy your dev tool. It's kind of a
Right.
soft reason. Right. It's like, yeah, that's great. You increase developer velocity by 20% and developers are paid, 150 plus a year. And so this is how we justify the ACV of our dev tool. And of course, everyone will pick it up. You know, I think that's not necessarily true. Like that's could be a component of the business value you're bringing, but are you decreasing costs? Are you part of the deployment pipeline? Are you doing something that has never been done before for the team? Save it. Are you increasing revenue somehow? So I think you need like firmer business metrics that you're moving. And as a founder, you should be assessing that in your customer discovery, right? Even before you start building, is like, if I had this, what are the business metrics that I can improve upon? Because dev productivity we've seen time and time again, isn't sufficient.
That's amazing. And the developer productivity is that's such a huge thing. And every week I feel like I end up reminding someone, no, it's you want them to care, but just people just don't. Because there are other like burning needs that they're spending time on. Like increasing the productivity by 23.9% is just it's a noble intent. It just doesn't doesn't work. All right, let's move on to the market structure and GTM for infra. Now, as we sit here in 2025, how do you think the go to market motion is playing out for infra startups? And also, assuming it's bottom up right now, when should they layer in enterprise sales? What's a rule of thumb to figure out? Okay, now we got to get in like real salespeople.
hmm Yeah, I think infra, I mean, there's two buckets of infra company right now. There are the bottoms up go to market motion companies that could be distributed through open source or community led efforts that you tack on sales assisted once you're seeing that these companies are using you across the organization and you try to have like an upsell motion. And then you have infra businesses that have a smaller group of targets that they can sell into, kind of, probably somewhere under 5,000 customers, where it's much more of a targeted account based marketing sale, where you do founder first, sales first, and then you build out a sales team. So we're actually seeing both types of infra companies today. Of course, in this latter bucket, you're going for 200,000 plus land deals to justify bringing on AEs earlier in the company's life cycle. And then from the bottoms up, we're seeing pricing around 30, 75 land deals. But it is interesting. I didn't think we would see the revival of the sales led motion in infrastructure, but we are seeing some of it with these RL as a service companies. And it's quite interesting. And it's really a function of who is your ICP and how do they procure software and how do you get in the door as fast as possible.
Right. And let's talk about the pricing mechanics in infra. I'm a huge pricing nerd. I don't know why it excites me, but I find it fascinating because it's a very interesting, nuanced engine that people have to build. And in the early days, it doesn't matter. It's fine. But I think it becomes a huge lever as you grow up.
Mhm.
So when it comes to pricing in infra, how do you think about it, and how do you advise companies to help them figure out pricing?
Pricing is one of the hardest things to do. Oh my God.
Right.
Especially as an early stage startup, right? Pricing is
Yeah.
a moving object.
Right.
I think there's three things, which is one, as a founder, expect it to change, right? Two is try to, when you're doing your pricing discovery, anchor really high, right? To see kind of the upper bound and then customer kind of rationalizing where they would land. Three, really tying it to the business value that you're delivering, which is beyond developer productivity, but cost savings, time to market, revenue lift. And the fourth thing that we tend to think about is um, is there a product that's adjacent but related to your offering that you can use as an anchor point to say, if you're paying $100 a year for X product, how many relative dollars would you be spending with us? Just to give a sense of willingness to pay. Often, infrastructure is priced around usage, networking, storage, compute costs. But what's been interesting with this new wave of kind of these dev tools that are AI first, you can see that historically pricing has been around gross margins as well. And what you want to see from a gross margin profile to become a publicly traded company. And now that is less of a concern as compared to distribution usage, with the belief that AI model costs will continue to go down, which we have seen 10x year over year and think will continue to do so. But I would say that that shift in winning the hearts and minds of users has influenced some of the pricing, which has been a huge change over the past 2 years.
Amazing. And also for platform companies, how early do you think they should push the ecosystem, like SDKs and integrations and partner motion, versus deepening the wedge that they already have? They enter the market with a wedge, it's strong, and should they push forward in that direction, or should they spend time on these other things?
Some of it is a function of what they're seeing in their core business and where they're being pulled, right? As a small team, you only have so many hours in the day. And if you are seeing incredibly strong pull for the main product, it's really useful to try to get to a few million in ARR around that core service before expanding scope with an ecosystem play or a second product line. What's really important is every exceptional infra business has become a platform with multiple different products. And if you are building an infrastructure service and you don't think that is possible out of the gate, you're probably not going to go the distance. So you should be looking for those opportunities of how to build an ecosystem, what else you can tie into, what else you can own over time, and really focus on the core for the first few million. But if you want to become huge, you do have to expand scope. Like I think that's been a huge learning in infrastructure over the past 5 years is, in the networking times, you could have the best switch, you could do incredibly well, you could go get acquired for a few hundred million to a billion, or you could build like one core database. But now you have to have multiple products. We've seen this with Databricks. We've seen this with Vercel. You want to go to the distance and become, 500 million plus ARR and be a candidate to IPO. You can't
Right.
just stick to your core.
Yeah. Let's move to the lessons learned from your own investments. And you work with great companies. I'm sure you have companies that that didn't pan out. So I would love to understand across all the companies, spanning databases, open source, ETL, all these companies, what repeated pattern has separated like outlier companies from the just merely the good ones?
Yeah. The what I've observed across my portfolio is that the outliers consistently don't just ride a wave, but create a category. They really start to either create the category out of nothing or two, become so prominent that they redefine how the category is thought about. And so they do this through the product experience with data flywheels and networks effects and this platform expansion we just talked about. But they really own a subject matter and are considered the experts in that space. The other thing that is I've noticed as a pattern is, you know, it's really critical that the people behind the companies have extreme learning velocity. We highlighted this earlier in the conversation, but they have to have an incredible ability to take feedback from customers, their VC partners, their go to market partners, and their employees to make smarter and smarter product and strategy decisions. The founders who have done good, not exceptionally well, don't have the same feedback loop velocity. And so they can't execute as fast and the market sometimes moves beyond them.
Now that for all the infra founders and would-be founders listening, what can you name three infra wedges that you would like to fund today?
Yeah. So as I said, we're really excited about observability, both the reimagining of traditional observability, like Datadog reinvention. Two is thinking about AI agent evals and observability. I think this is the next phase of how we create really amazing production systems. And three, we think that it's quite interesting to think through the rise of voice technologies, both model, middle layer, and I'll put it out there. I know we're talking about Infra, but app layer, anything in the voice stack. We published a piece on it recently. We're quite excited about voice.
And what's an infra category that looks commoditized but still has room because there's just so much work to do?
Well, that's a great question. So, you know, AI inference uh, has been an incredible space over the past few years. I was humbled to partner with Modal when I was at my last firm. You have other vendors in that space as well. They're doing incredible things. We can imagine in the span of time, as there are more companies that have their own specialized models or third party model services, they'll want really tuned inference stacks for their models that the more broad ranging platforms can't offer. So that's one area that could be very interesting is a super customized inference stack for your model in the cloud or also on the edge where you have different compute resources and are quite constrained. That could be a really interesting, underappreciated market opportunity. Kind of see it a little bit with fall, right? As this kind of second wave, but think about it like a third wave where you get that for everyone.
Right. I have one final question before we go to the rapid fire round. AI is moving so rapidly and infra is becoming AI native. So, what AI advancements are the most exciting to you today?
I think it's all this stuff with RL. I think this is kind of the rocket fuel for AI and AI agents. We're incredibly excited about that space. What else is really, as a completely frontier opportunity, we think that energy management is very exciting for AI. You know, if we continue to have the breadth of models, we're going to really have to think through how we manage energy and alternative sources. We work with a company called Crusoe that is really trying to help be a more green Neo GPU cloud. And then the third thing we're pretty excited about with AI is the app layer. I know we didn't talk about it today because I'm much more in the infra space, but voice AI applications across healthcare, insurance, and financial services field service teams, the ROI for using voice AI agents to automate a historically manual process is quite exciting.
Amazing. With that, we're at the rapid fire round. I'll ask a series of questions and would love to hear your answers 15 seconds or less. You ready? All right. Question number one. What's your favorite?
God's Bankers by Gerald Posner. Probably not what you expect.
Amazing. Oh, amazing. I'll check it out. I'm a huge reader, so it's great. All right, next question. Which historical figure do you admire the most?
Steve Jobs. And because
right. Right. All right. Next question. What's the one thing about infra investing that most people don't get?
the best technology doesn't always win.
Question. I think we talked about it earlier, but what separates great infra products from the merely good ones?
Ability to become a multi-product company.
What's the most underrated infra founder archetype?
Right now, I would say it's the Gen Z builders.
What's a signal that makes you want to actively pursue a company?
Under exceptionalism.
What have you changed your mind on recently?
Domain expertise trumps velocity.
Interesting. Maybe part B, 10 seconds. Like, why? That's interesting. Why?
You can be the smartest person in the room, but if you're not moving fast enough, someone will catch up and they'll have the customer base and they'll get that data flywheel and insights from them that they can surpass you.
All right. What's your wildest infra prediction for the next 12 months?
Gosh. Well, let's put it out there that Anthropic buys a company for over $1 billion.
Okay. All right. Final question. What's your number one advice to founders starting out today?
Talk to as many potential users and customers as possible, even before you start building anything.
Amazing. Stasia, this has been a brilliant, brilliant discussion. I loved your depth of thought here. Clearly, you spend day and night only thinking about infra, so it's always nice. It's always fun to chat with people. So thank you so much for coming onto the show and sharing your thoughts.
Thank you so much for having me. I had a wonderful time.